I rejected 100 brides, until a poor, quiet girl knocked my door at midnight. He was a man who had everything the world could offer: wealth, status, and respect. People admired him not just because of his family's power, but because he had always seemed thoughtful, intelligent, and precise in every decision he made. Yet, despite all his privileges, there was one thing that haunted him quietly, a question he could never answer. Why had he never felt a connection with anyone? Ever since he had reached the age when marriage became a topic in his family, he had been introduced to one young woman after another. Some were beautiful, some came from influential families, and some seemed to possess qualities that many would dream of in a life partner, but each time he found himself saying, no. Sometimes it was a fleeting thought, a sense that the smile wasn't genuine, or the conversation felt forced. Other times it was a deeper feeling, an intuition that something about the person didn't fit with his life, though he could not put it into words. Over the years, he had met more than 100 brides. One after another, introductions were made, tea was served, conversations were exchanged, and smiles were offered. But at the end of every meeting, he politely declined. Some girls cried, some were confused, and some left quietly, heartbroken but graceful. Meanwhile, he felt a strange emptiness. There was no joy in rejecting them. There was no thrill in being particular. It was as though he were searching for something invisible, something he could not name, and every failed meeting only reminded him of that missing piece. His family, naturally, was growing anxious.
Relatives whispered behind closed doors. Friends, who once admired his careful decisions, began shaking their heads in disbelief.
Why does he keep rejecting every girl? They asked each other. Is he impossible, or is he afraid of commitment? People around him could not understand that his refusals did not come from arrogance or pride. They came from a deep, unspoken need to find someone who could match his inner world, someone whose presence felt like home. The man himself began noticing the strain this was causing. Every family gathering included subtle hints, awkward conversations about his future, and gentle reminders that time was passing. Even strangers offered unsolicited advice. "You are too picky," they would say. "There are many girls who would be lucky to marry you. Why wait?" And while he nodded politely, inside he felt the growing pressure of expectation pressing on him like a heavy weight. Despite the world's admiration and his wealth, he began feeling alone in a way that money could never fix. The grandeur of his home, the cars, the lavish parties, they all seemed hollow. Even the company of friends and relatives could not fill the quiet void he carried in his heart. He realized that none of the girls he had met so far had made him feel truly seen, truly understood. They looked at him and admired his wealth, his status, or his appearance, but no one had ever looked into him as if they cared about what he felt, what he dreamed, what he feared. Some nights he would sit in his study, looking out at the city lights, brace. He thought about the girls he had rejected and wondered if perhaps he was missing something important. Maybe he was too careful, too demanding, or too cautious. But then, he would remember the awkwardness of conversations with the brides, the polite smiles that hid distant minds, and the hollow words that had never touched him. No, he concluded, it wasn't carelessness or fear, Bert. He was something deeper. He was searching for authenticity, a connection that went beyond appearances and words. His daily routine reflected his controlled and precise nature. Every morning he woke up early, read the news, exercised, and reviewed his work and investments. His days were productive, yet the evenings often brought a strange loneliness. During dinners, while the family or staff talked, he would sit quietly, occasionally nodding or adding a comment, but mostly listening. He noticed small things others overlooked. The way a bird landed on the balcony, the sound of rain against the windows, the faint smell of jasmine from the garden. These details brought him some comfort, but they also reminded him that he lived in a world that often ignored the simple and true things in life. People often misunderstood him. They assumed that because he had wealth and power, he must be arrogant or cold-hearted. But the truth was far from that. He had a heart that cared deeply, but it was selective because he had learned early in life that the wrong connections could bring pain, not just to him, but to others as well. And so he waited. He waited for someone whose presence could calm the storm inside him, someone whose smile could feel like sunlight breaking through a long winter. The more he rejected, the more unusual he seemed to others. Friends would joke about him, saying, "He's rejected so many girls, maybe he is waiting for someone who doesn't exist." But the man never laughed. He understood that jokes could not reach the truth of what he sought. He had met many, but he had never met her, the one who could awaken his soul in a quiet, undeniable way. Interestingly, despite all the rejections, he never lost his respect for people. He admired courage, kindness, and intelligence wherever he saw it. He often gave advice to young men and women about life and character, believing firmly that wealth was nothing without integrity. Breaths. He looked for these qualities in the women he met, but somehow, among the 100 introductions, no one had fully matched what he valued. Not just the qualities themselves, but the way they were lived, naturally, without pretension. Occasionally, he wondered if he was too idealistic, if perhaps he was asking too much of life or others. Could a person truly possess all the qualities he sought? Mistaking. Maybe he was setting impossible standards, but deep down, he knew that he was not searching for perfection. Desk. He was searching for authenticity, honesty, and quiet strength, the kind of character that could be revealed in small gestures, in moments of sincerity, in the way someone treated others without expecting anything in return. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that his life had become a delicate balance between hope and frustration. Hope, because he believed such a person must exist somewhere. Frustration, because every attempt to find her ended in polite rejection, leaving him with the same quiet emptiness. And yet he continued to wait, because he understood that the wrong choice could never bring the happiness he longed for. By this point in his life, the man had become known not only for his wealth and intellect, but also for his unusual approach to marriage.
People whispered stories about the man who rejected 100 brides, some in awe, some in judgment.
But he remained unbothered. His focus was not on what others thought, but on what he felt. He was searching for a heart that could meet his own in quiet understanding, and until that happened, he knew he could not settle. And so, he continued his days, living in a world of luxury yet craving something far simpler and purer. Genuine connection.
Each introduction reminded him of what he wanted and what he did not.
Breaths. Each polite refusal was a step closer to finding someone who could truly enter his life. Not because of wealth or status, but because of the invisible qualities that truly mattered. Little did he know, his life was about to change in a way he could never predict. After all the rejections, after all the polite conversations and empty smiles, the universe had its own plan. The next encounter would not be with someone famous, beautiful, or wealthy. It would be with someone completely unexpected, a person whose quiet presence and genuine character would begin to fill the emptiness he had carried for so long. And as he sat in his study, unaware of what was coming, he felt a mixture of anticipation and doubt. Perhaps this was just another meeting, another polite conversation that would end in refusal. Or perhaps, just perhaps, this was the moment when everything would begin to change. It was a quiet night, one of those nights when the city sleeps, but the mind refuses to rest. The man sat in his study, going over some papers, trying to focus, but his thoughts drifted, as they often did, to the same empty feeling he could never shake. The house was still, the servants long gone to their quarters, and even the wind seemed to hush itself in respect for the silence. Then, unexpectedly, there came a sound that made him start. A soft, hesitant knock echoed from the front door. At first, he thought it might be a mistake, a delivery, or perhaps someone seeking help from the guards outside. But the knock came again, slightly louder this time, filled with uncertainty and urgency. He frowned. Who could be visiting at such a late hour? Reluctantly, he rose from his chair and moved toward the door. Bess. He opened it cautiously, and there she was, a young girl, standing under the dim glow of the porch light. Her clothes were simple, worn and patched in places, yet there was something about her posture, her quiet courage, that immediately drew his attention. She was small, perhaps younger than him by a few years, with eyes that held a mixture of fear and hope. She did not speak at first. She merely looked up at him, silently asking for something she could not name. The man studied her carefully. Her hands were clasped together, fingers nervous, yet steady. Her hair was slightly messy, and the wind had blown it across her face, but she did not mind. There was an honesty in her eyes, a sincerity he had rarely seen in the polished faces of the brides he had rejected. "What brings you here at this hour?" he finally asked, his voice calm but firm. She swallowed, hesitated, and then spoke softly.
I need help, sir.
"Please, I have nowhere to go."
Her words were humble, her tone unassuming. There was no demand, no expectation.
Praise. She did not mention his wealth, his status, or anything else that most people would assume might sway him. She simply spoke from a place of need, and something about that simplicity struck him. The man's first instinct was to turn her away. After all, it was unusual, even improper, for someone to knock on a wealthy man's door in the middle of the night. Yet something in her voice, the quiet plea behind her words, made him pause. He could see that she was not pretending, that she was not playing some trick or seeking personal gain. She was merely seeking shelter, safety, and perhaps a little kindness. "Come inside," he said finally, stepping aside. Breaths. He had no idea why he made that choice, but it felt right. She nodded, relief washing over her face, and stepped into the grand foyer of his home.
Every movement she made was careful, respectful, yet she carried herself with dignity.
The man could not help but notice that, unlike the brides who had visited him, she did not glance around in awe or curiosity. She seemed content simply to be where she was, her focus entirely on the moment. He led her to the sitting room and offered her a chair. She sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, looking around only briefly before lowering her gaze. The room with its polished floors, expensive furniture, and glittering chandeliers could have intimidated someone less confident. But she did not appear impressed or intimidated. She was simply herself, quiet, unassuming, and entirely present. "Can I get you some water?" he asked. Breath. She nodded slightly. "Yes, please," she murmured. Her voice was soft, yet there was a firmness to it that suggested resilience, a strength hidden beneath her gentle demeanor. He returned with a glass of water and placed it before her. "Breathe." She accepted it politely, thanking him with a nod. As she drank, he observed her carefully. She was not just quiet, she was composed. She did not fidget, she did not complain, and she did not act entitled in any way. This was a stark contrast to the countless brides he had met over the years, many of whom had carried themselves with an air of expectation, assuming their beauty or family status would win him over. For a long moment they sat in silence. The man did not know what to say, and she did not rush to fill the quiet. The stillness was not uncomfortable. Rather, it felt natural, as though time itself had slowed to allow this rare encounter to unfold. Birth. Slowly, he began to ask her questions, not about her appearance, not about her family, but about her life, her journey, and why she had come to his door. She spoke modestly, revealing only what was necessary. B. She came from a humble background, a small village far from the city. Her family had struggled for years, and recent circumstances had left her with no one to turn to. Her voice never carried bitterness, only honesty. She described the challenges she faced with a matter-of-fact tone, accepting life's difficulties without complaint, yet with a quiet strength that could not be ignored. As she spoke, the man found himself listening more intently than he ever had with any bride. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of small joys, helping her younger siblings, caring for a neighbor, or the simple beauty of a sunrise. He realized that she valued things that could not be bought: kindness, integrity, and perseverance. These were qualities he had longed to see in a partner, yet rarely found. The night grew deeper, and the city outside remained asleep. He could have asked her to leave, suggesting she return home at first light. But instead he felt a strange pull, a desire to offer her shelter, even if only for the night. There was something in her presence that made the emptiness he carried inside feel a little lighter. "Thank you for letting me in," she said quietly, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and relief. He nodded, unsure how to respond. Words felt inadequate for the moment. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, not because of wealth, not because of comfort, but because of the presence of someone genuine, someone whose character spoke louder than any appearance or status ever could. As the hours passed, they talked quietly about simple things: life, dreams, and small hopes. She never asked for anything beyond basic kindness, never demanded attention, and never sought to impress him. Yet, with every word, every small gesture, she revealed a depth of character that was rare in a world obsessed with surface appearances.
The man began to realize that he had underestimated the power of simplicity.
For years he had sought connections in grand gestures, polished appearances, and impressive accomplishments. But here was someone whose value could not be measured by wealth, status, or beauty. Her worth was in her heart, her resilience, and the quiet strength she carried through life's challenges. The night slowly turned into early morning. Finally, she stood to leave, though she hesitated, unsure of whether she could truly stay in this strange, luxurious house.
The man understood her hesitation. She had never been in such a place before, and yet she carried herself with quiet dignity.
"You can stay," he said softly, surprising even himself. "For tonight, at least."
You need not worry about a place to sleep." Her eyes widened slightly, gratitude evident in her gaze, though she did not speak much. She simply nodded and accepted his offer. That small, silent agreement marked the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted: a connection born not of wealth or status, but of genuine human presence, trust, and honesty. As she settled in a quiet corner of the house, the man returned to his study, unable to focus on work or routine. His mind replayed the evening over and over, the courage in her voice, the calm dignity in her posture, the small ways she had revealed her true character. For the first time in many years, he felt a spark of hope, a feeling that perhaps his long search was finally coming to an unexpected turning point. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if she would stay or if life would pull her away by morning. But one thing was certain: the quiet, humble girl who had knocked on his door at midnight had awakened something inside him, a realization that life's most important connections could not be sought or measured, but could only be recognized when they arrived, often unexpectedly and without warning. And as the first light of dawn began to touch the edges of the city, he found himself waiting, not for another bride, not for a grand introduction, but for the small, quiet moments that revealed the true heart of a person, the very thing he had been searching for all along. The days that followed the midnight visit were unlike anything the man had experienced in years. At first, he was unsure how to act around her. She had become a quiet presence in his household, moving gracefully through the rooms without disturbance, always polite and respectful.
Unlike the brides he had met before, she did not try to impress him with stories of her past, with beauty, or with status.
She simply lived her life honestly, quietly, and with dignity. He found himself observing her more closely, noticing the small things that spoke volumes. The way she treated the servants with kindness, never raising her voice or demanding attention. The way she handled the simplest chores with patience and care, whether sweeping the floor or arranging flowers in the vase. It was as if she carried a sense of purpose and responsibility in everything she did, and yet she never made it feel like a burden. Her humility intrigued him. In all his life he had met people who sought approval or recognition, who measured their worth by how much they could gain or how much they could display. But she was different. She valued the small joys of life, cleaning a dusty shelf, sharing a simple meal, or helping a neighbor in need. She did not boast, she did not complain, she did not compare herself to others. And slowly he began to see that these qualities, so ordinary to some, were extraordinary to him. One afternoon he found her sitting in the garden, quietly tending to a small patch of flowers. He had passed by her several times before, but this day something compelled him to stop.
"Why do you spend so much time here?"
he asked. She looked up, startled for a moment, but then smiled softly. "These flowers, they remind me that life goes on, no matter what happens," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with sincerity.
"Even when everything is difficult, there is always something small and beautiful to hold on to." He nodded, though he did not speak. He realized that her words carried a depth of wisdom far beyond her years.
While others had tried to impress him with wealth, connections, or appearances, she had impressed him without even trying, with honesty, with thoughtfulness, and with a heart that could see beauty where others overlooked it. Breath. Days turned into weeks, and during this time he began to learn more about her life. She shared small stories, not seeking sympathy but simply explaining her past so he could understand her better. She spoke of her family, who had worked tirelessly to provide for her and her siblings, of the struggles they had faced, and of the resilience she had developed along the way. What struck him most was her strength. Despite all the challenges she had faced, she remained gentle and compassionate. She never blamed anyone for her circumstances, never expressed bitterness, and never asked for more than she could earn herself. In a world where so many people were consumed by envy, pride, or greed, she stood out as a quiet beacon of integrity. The man began to see himself differently through her eyes. In her presence he felt a sense of humility he had not experienced before. She did not flatter him. She did not praise him unnecessarily, yet her respect for others made him reflect on how he had treated people in the past. He realized that he had been seeking someone who could match him in superficial ways: wealth, beauty, status. But what truly mattered was character, kindness, and empathy. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he found her sitting alone by the window, sketching in a small notebook. He was drawn to her in a way he had never felt before. "What are you drawing?" he asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, a soft smile on her face. "Just the garden. The flowers, the trees, the way the light falls. It reminds me to notice small things, to be grateful for them." He watched her for a while, noticing the concentration in her eyes, the way her hand moved delicately across the page. For the first time he realized that he wanted to know everything about her, not because of any expectation, but because he was genuinely interested in who she was. Her presence had awakened something inside him, a desire for connection, understanding, and companionship that no wealth or status had ever brought. Over time, their conversations grew deeper. He found himself sharing thoughts he had never spoken aloud to anyone else, about his fears, his disappointments, and the emptiness he had carried despite all his wealth and privilege. She listened without judgment, without interruption, and without offering empty words. Breaths. Her silence was not emptiness.
It was understanding.
Her presence made him feel safe enough to reveal his vulnerabilities, a gift he had not known he needed.
One day, she helped him organize a small charity event in the neighborhood. He watched in admiration as she spoke to families, helped children, and coordinated volunteers with patience and efficiency. She did not seek recognition or thanks. She acted simply because it was right. And as he observed her, he understood that true beauty and strength were not in appearances or titles. They were in actions, in the way a person treated others, and in the sincerity behind their choices. Her quiet confidence began to inspire him.
He noticed small changes in himself.
He became more patient, more attentive, more aware of the needs of others. He realized that he had been living a life focused on himself, on expectations, and on appearances. And yet, in her presence, he discovered a new way of living, one that valued kindness, integrity, and the quiet joy of helping others. One rainy afternoon, as the drops tapped gently against the window, he found her sitting with a young street boy who had wandered near the house, hungry and cold. She offered him food, a warm blanket, and a comforting word. The man watched silently, feeling a surge of admiration and affection. He understood that this was what he had been missing in all his previous encounters with brides, the ability to see and act with genuine compassion, without expectation or pretense. As the weeks passed, the bond between them grew stronger. He no longer saw her as a visitor in his home. He saw her as a part of his life. Her presence brought warmth, calm, and a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He began to anticipate her small gestures, the way she smiled at a child, the way she arranged flowers on a table, the quiet laughter that occasionally escaped her lips. Each moment was a revelation, a reminder that life's true value lay not in wealth or status, but in the honesty and goodness of the heart. Despite this growing connection, he remained cautious. Perhaps he knew that feelings could be fragile, and that rushing could destroy something beautiful. Yet he could not deny the truth that was slowly emerging. She had become the most important person in his life. Her quiet strength, humility, and compassion had awakened emotions he had long thought impossible for him to feel. One evening, as they walked together through the garden, he finally spoke aloud what he had been feeling. "I have met many people in my life," he said slowly, "but I have never met anyone like you." You see the world differently, and because of that, you have opened my eyes. I cannot explain it fully, but being around you, it feels like I am finally home. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both surprise and understanding. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she reached out gently, touching his arm in a way that felt natural, warm, and unforced. That single gesture, small yet meaningful, conveyed more than words ever could. It was a moment of mutual recognition, of respect, and of a bond that was slowly turning into something far deeper. The man realized that for all his careful planning, for all his wealth and intelligence, he had never experienced a connection like this. It was not based on appearances, family, or expectations. It was based on trust, respect, and the quiet beauty of character. And as he watched her smile softly, helping a stray cat find shelter from the rain, he understood that he had finally found the kind of person he had been searching for all his life. Her presence had changed him. It had taught him patience, humility, and the importance of noticing small, meaningful gestures. She had shown him that true love and connection were not found in grand introductions or appearances, but in the simple, honest moments that revealed the heart of a person. And as the rain continued to fall softly around them, he knew that his life would never be the same. The quiet, humble girl who had knocked on his door at midnight was no longer just a visitor. She was becoming the most important part of his world, a presence that brought meaning, warmth, and hope to a life that had long been filled with emptiness. For the first time in many years, he felt a deep sense of peace. He did not know what the future would bring, but he understood one undeniable truth. Some connections are meant to change lives, quietly, profoundly, and forever. And in her he had found such a connection, one that would shape not only his heart, but the way he saw the world itself. As the days turned into weeks, the man began noticing subtle changes in himself, changes he could not ignore. He found himself thinking about her constantly, wondering how she was spending her day when he was busy with work or meetings. Her presence had become a comforting rhythm in his life, a quiet warmth that followed him wherever he went. He realized that he was no longer merely observing her. He was feeling deeply connected, in a way that he had never felt with anyone else. Her humility and kindness continued to inspire him. Every small act she performed seemed to reveal more of her character. She did not seek attention or recognition, yet she made an impact simply by being who she was. He watched as she helped the staff organize their day, treated every person she met with respect, and found joy in the simplest tasks, watering plants, preparing meals, or tending to the little things that many overlooked. One afternoon, a poor family arrived at his estate, seeking aid. Their home had been damaged in a storm, and they were struggling to rebuild. Firsties, she immediately took charge, coordinating resources, gathering supplies, and calming the worried parents. He observed silently, admiring the way she handled the situation with patience, compassion, and quiet authority. It struck him that this was the kind of inner strength that mattered far more than wealth or status. While others might have sought recognition for helping, she did it simply because it was the right thing to do. The man began reflecting on his own life. He had spent years surrounded by people who were polite but distant, who valued appearances over substance. All the brides he had met seemed to measure worth in wealth, status, or charm, but she measured life in sincerity, effort, and kindness. He realized that he had been blind to what truly mattered until now. Her presence was showing him a world he had never fully seen, a world in which character and integrity mattered above all else. Over time, their interactions became more personal. He began sharing his own thoughts, worries, and memories, things he had never voiced to anyone. Breaths. She listened without judgment, never interrupting, never offering hollow reassurances. Her empathy and understanding were different from anything he had experienced. He felt safe revealing his vulnerabilities, trusting that she would see him not as a wealthy man or a powerful figure, but as a human being with fears and hopes, just like anyone else. One evening, as they walked through the quiet garden under a sky full of stars, he found himself speaking aloud feelings he had been holding back. "I have spent my life searching for something I could not name," he said softly. "And for years I have been disappointed. I thought wealth and status could guide me to the right person. But I see now that I was wrong. I never knew what I was missing until I met you." She looked at him with calm eyes, listening patiently. There was no rush, no expectation. Her quiet presence gave him the courage to continue. "I never sought to impress anyone," she said softly. "Brett, I only tried to live honestly and do what I could for those around me. Perhaps that is why we understand each other." Her words struck him deeply. He realized that he had never truly sought connection in the way that mattered. He had been focused on superficial qualities, while the essence of life, the small acts of kindness, the quiet resilience, the honesty of heart, had escaped his notice. And now, standing before her, he understood that she possessed all the qualities he had longed for, without even trying to appear extraordinary. The man began to notice how much he relied on her presence. Her laughter, subtle and gentle, brought him comfort. Her quiet wisdom helped him make decisions with more clarity. Her compassion inspired him to act with greater empathy. He realized that she was not just a guest in his life. She was becoming the center of it. The thought of her not being there unsettled him in a way he had never experienced before. Friends and relatives began noticing a change in him as well. The man who had once been cold and distant in social gatherings was now more patient, kinder, and attentive. He no longer spent his time judging others or seeking perfection. Instead, he focused on listening, observing, and understanding, the very qualities she had brought into his life.
People began to remark on the transformation, wondering what had caused this sudden shift in his behavior.
Despite these changes, he remained cautious. He knew that feelings could be fragile, and that rushing could spoil something rare and beautiful. Yet his heart was gradually acknowledging what his mind had long suspected. She was different from anyone he had ever known, and he could not ignore the truth growing inside him. One afternoon, while she was arranging flowers in the hall, he watched her carefully. The way she worked, with focus and care, made him realize how much he admired her, not just for what she did, but for who she was. He remembered all the brides he had rejected, the polite refusals, and the empty conversations. None of them had possessed this quiet strength, this integrity, this ability to inspire without words or demands.
A key moment came when she helped a sick child in the neighborhood. The child's family could not afford proper medical attention, and she took the initiative to arrange care, comfort the parents, and stay with the child until help arrived.
The man observed silently, feeling a surge of admiration and emotion. It was in this act, unnoticed by most, uncelebrated, purely kind, that he realized she was extraordinary, not in wealth, not in beauty, but in heart. That night he could not sleep. He sat in his study, replaying the events of the day over and over. Every gesture she had made, every word she had spoken, every smile she had given, all of it weighed heavily on his mind. He understood in a way he never had before that he was falling in love, not with an idea, not with appearance, but with the essence of who she was. Breath.
Yet, he struggled with the fear that she might never see him as more than a wealthy man who offered her shelter. He worried that his feelings could complicate her life, or that the world would judge them harshly.
But every time he saw her, those fears melted away, replaced by a quiet certainty that she was the person he had been searching for all along. The man began to take small steps, subtly showing his affection without overwhelming her. He offered help when needed, shared stories from his life, and found ways to bring small joys into her day. A favorite tea, a book she had mentioned, a warm blanket on a rainy afternoon. Breath. Each gesture was met with her quiet gratitude, and in return he felt a happiness he had never known. In her presence, he learned patience and humility. He realized that love was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but about understanding, respect, and shared moments of kindness. The more he got to know her, the more he understood that true connection was built slowly, quietly, and with intention. As weeks passed, their bond deepened further. He noticed how she interacted with the world, helping neighbors, caring for animals, and offering comfort to anyone in need. Each act reinforced his admiration, and he found himself wanting to protect her, support her, and share his life with her in ways he had never imagined possible. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, he finally spoke his heart more clearly than ever before.
I have met many people in my life, but you
are different. You see the world with honesty, compassion, and courage. I admire you, respect you, and I care for you more than I have ever cared for anyone else. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting, calm, understanding. Breath. I never sought attention or recognition, she said softly. I only tried to live honestly and help where I could. I think I care for you too, in ways I cannot fully explain yet.
In that moment, the man felt a wave of relief and joy.
All the years of searching, All the disappointment with other brides and all the empty encounters seemed to fall away.
He understood that he had finally found what he had been seeking all along. Not perfection, not wealth or status, but a heart that resonated with his own.
The realization brought him a peace he had never known. He no longer felt the emptiness that had haunted him for so long. He had found someone whose presence could fill his life with warmth, understanding, and genuine love. And in her quiet, unassuming way, she had changed him completely, teaching him the value of patience, humility, and true connection. That night, as they parted to rest, he felt a quiet certainty that their lives were intertwined. He did not know the exact path that lay ahead, but he knew that he wanted to walk it with her. She was no longer just a guest in his home or a visitor in his life. She was becoming the person he could not imagine living without, the one who had awakened his heart in ways he had long thought impossible. The days that followed felt different from anything the man had ever experienced. Every morning he woke up with a sense of anticipation, eager to see her, talk to her, or simply share a quiet moment in her presence. His life, which had once been ruled by routine and careful decisions, was now filled with a warmth he could not fully explain. He had spent years searching, waiting, and rejecting countless brides, but now he realized that the one who mattered most had entered his life quietly, unexpectedly, and completely. They continued to spend time together in the small routines of daily life, yet each moment felt significant. Whether they were walking through the garden, arranging flowers, helping neighbors, or simply sitting in silence, there was a growing sense of connection and understanding between them. He began to recognize that true love was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but about shared moments of respect, trust, and care. Friends and family began to notice the change in him. Despair. The man who had once been described as cold, distant, or impossible had softened. His laughter, once rare, now came freely. His patience, once limited, now seemed endless. Relatives whispered to one another, curious about the source of this transformation. But he paid little attention to their speculations. His focus was entirely on her, the quiet, humble girl who had awakened his heart. One afternoon he decided to take her to the town market. It was a place full of color, noise, and life, a place where most people would have felt out of place. But she moved through it with ease and grace. She greeted the shopkeepers politely, helped a child find a lost toy, and even guided a struggling vendor on how to organize his goods. He watched in admiration, realizing that her kindness and intelligence extended far beyond his home. She had a natural way of improving the lives of those around her without ever seeking praise or recognition. It was during moments like these that he began to fully understand the depth of his feelings. He admired her courage, her humility, her wisdom, and her empathy. He realized that he was no longer simply fascinated by her presence. He loved her, truly and completely. This realization brought a mix of joy and fear. Joy because he had finally found the person he had been searching for all his life. Fear because he worried that expressing his feelings too soon might overwhelm her or disrupt the delicate connection they had built. Yet, as days passed, he understood that love was not about hiding feelings or being cautious forever. It was about honesty, trust, and courage. One evening, after a long day of helping with a small neighborhood project, he sat beside her under the soft glow of lanterns. The gentle hum of the evening filled the air, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. "I have something I need to tell you," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. She looked at him, her eyes calm and attentive, encouraging him without saying a word. "For years, I have searched for something I could not name. I have met many people, and yet none of them felt right. I thought it was because I was too careful, too selective. But now I understand. It was because I had not yet met you." Breath. Her eyes widened slightly. a gentle warmth spreading across her face. He continued, "You have shown me what truly matters in life: honesty, kindness, courage, and compassion. You have awakened something in me that I thought was lost. I love you deeply and completely. And I want to spend my life with you, if you will have me." For a long moment, she did not speak, berate. Instead, she looked at him with quiet understanding. Then, slowly, a smile formed on her lips, and she took his hand in hers. I care for you too," she said softly. "Not because of your wealth, not because of your status, but because of who you are. You have a good heart, and you have always treated me with respect and understanding. I feel safe with you, and I think I love you too." That moment marked the beginning of a new chapter in both of their lives. Their connection, which had grown slowly over weeks, now became undeniable. The man realized that he had finally found the person who matched his heart, not in superficial qualities, but in character, values, and understanding. Break. She had shown him that true love was not about appearances or expectations, but about being seen and accepted for who you truly are. Word of their bond eventually reached the wider community. Desperate. Friends and family, who had once doubted the possibility of him finding a partner, were surprised and curious. Some questioned the difference in their social backgrounds, while others wondered how someone so quiet and humble could capture the heart of a man known for rejecting countless brides. But the man and the girl paid little attention to the opinions of others. Their focus was on each other, on the quiet, steady love that had grown between them.
Over time, he introduced her to his world gradually.
She met the family, attended small gatherings, and shared in the responsibilities of his household.
Each interaction reinforced the respect and admiration he felt for her.
Breaths. She remained humble, kind, and composed, never letting the attention or status affect her behavior. In return, he learned to be more open, patient, and compassionate, guided by her gentle influence. They also faced challenges, as any relationship does. Some people disapproved, unable to accept the differences in their backgrounds, doubted the sincerity of their feelings, assuming that wealth or social pressure could influence emotions. But they faced these challenges together, supporting and protecting each other with understanding and patience. Their bond grew stronger with every test, proving that their connection was built on trust, respect, and genuine affection. One special day, he decided to propose formally. It was not a grand event with thousands of guests, but a quiet, heartfelt moment in the garden where their friendship had first deepened. He knelt before her, offering a simple ring, and spoke from the heart. "Will you marry me?" he asked softly. "Will you continue this journey with me as my partner, my equal, and my greatest joy?" Tears of happiness welled in her eyes, and she nodded, smiling through her emotions. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." That simple affirmation brought a sense of completion, fulfillment, and joy unlike anything either of them had experienced before. Their engagement was celebrated quietly at first, with close family and friends. Later, a larger celebration was held, where people marveled at the union of two individuals who seemed so different, yet were perfectly matched in heart and soul. The man who had once rejected countless brides now stood proudly beside the girl who had changed his life forever. Together they embodied a lesson that touched everyone who witnessed their story. True love is found not in wealth, beauty, or status, but in character, kindness, and the quiet connection that grows over time.
Life continued, filled with love, mutual respect, and shared purpose.
They worked together on community projects, helped those in need, and nurtured each other's dreams. Their home, once a place of quiet emptiness, became filled with laughter, warmth, and a sense of belonging. Finally understood that all his rejections had led him to this moment, The moment when he found a partner who was perfect not because of appearances or social standing, but because of the love, honesty, and integrity she brought into his life. Grace. Years later, he often reflected on the journey that had brought them together. He thought about the 100 brides he had rejected, each encounter teaching him something about what he wanted and, more importantly, what he needed. And he thought about the night she had knocked on his door, seeking shelter without expectation, carrying only kindness and courage in her heart. That night had changed everything. It had opened the door not only to his home, but to a life filled with love, joy, and meaning. In the end, the man and the girl built a life together that was both ordinary and extraordinary.
Ordinary in the sense that it was built on daily routines, shared responsibilities, and quiet moments of affection.
Extraordinary in the sense that it was filled with love that was genuine, resilient, and transformative.
They had found in each other a partner, a friend, and a soulmate. The rare combination that turns life from routine into something magical. And so, the story of the man who had rejected 100 brides came to its natural, beautiful conclusion. The poor, quiet girl who had knocked on his door at midnight became the one who filled his life with meaning. Their love was not loud, flashy, or dramatic. It was steady, enduring, and true. It was a love that reminded everyone who heard their story that the most valuable qualities in a person are often hidden from view, waiting to be discovered by someone who is willing to see beyond appearances and embrace the heart beneath. In her he had found everything he had ever hoped for, and in him she had found a life of respect, trust, and care. Together they lived a life full of quiet joy, shared purpose, and unwavering love, a life that proved the truth he had been searching for all along. That love is not measured by wealth, beauty, or status, but by character, kindness, and the connection that grows quietly and profoundly between two hearts.